A man in a plain dark jacket and worn jeans walks into the lobby of one of the most expensive hotels in Nashville, Tennessee, sets a single duffel bag on the floor beside the check-in desk, and waits. He does not announce himself. He does not produce a business card. He does not say anything that would tell the man behind the desk who he actually is, or why he is actually there. He simply waits, the way a guest waits, and watches. What he is watching for is exactly what happens next. The 3-second assessment that every front desk associate in a luxury property makes automatically without knowing they are making it. The read that runs from clothes to bag to posture to the question the desk associate's expression answers before any words are spoken. The question is, does this person belong here? The man behind the desk looks at the jacket, the jeans, the single bag, the absence of a car that has been valet parked or a driver who has carried things inside. He looks for 2 seconds longer than he should. "Can I help you?" he says. And there is something in the way he says it, a quality of condescension so practiced it has become invisible to the person doing it. That is the exact thing the man in the jacket has come to find. He has found it in under 90 seconds. He will not say so for another 4 hours. What happens in those 4 hours? What the man observes, what he records, what he does when it is over, and what the hotel on 5th Avenue South in Nashville looks like 12 months later is a story about the specific cost of treating a guest as though they have not yet earned the room they are standing in. There is a hotel in Nashville, Tennessee, called the Auditing House. It stands on 5th Avenue South in the Gulch neighborhood, 14 stories of pale limestone and brushed steel that went up 6 years ago on the site of a parking structure, which is the kind of transformation that cities make when money arrives in quantity and decides to stay. The rooms start at $490 a night. The penthouse floor starts at $3,200. The restaurant on the second floor, called Sable, has been reviewed in 5 national publications, all favorably, and the bar off the lobby, dark oak, low lighting, a bourbon selection that has its own printed booklet, is the kind of place where conversations happen that people prefer not to have in their offices. The lobby is designed to communicate arrival, not ordinary arrival, the kind of arrival that announces itself. The ceilings are 26 feet. The floor is Italian travertine, the color of warm sand, heated from beneath so that it is never cold underfoot regardless of the season. The floral arrangements are changed 3 times a week by a firm in Brentwood that has a contract specifying not only the varieties, but the precise height at which each arrangement should sit. Because the sight lines from the entrance matter, and the manager of the Auditing House is a person with opinions about sight lines. The people who stay at the Auditing House are, generally, people who have stayed at places like the Auditing House before and have developed a fluency in its signals. They arrive with luggage that communicates something. They dress for the lobby in the way that people dress for lobbies when they understand that the lobby is a social space with its own grammar. They interact with the staff with the easy authority of people accustomed to being served, which is a skill like any other and communicates itself whether the person intends it to or not. The man who arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in March arrived the other way. Dark jacket, soft at the collar, the kind bought a long time ago and never replaced because it still worked. Jeans, worn through at the left knee in a way that was not fashionable. A single duffel bag, dark canvas that had done considerable travel in its life. He came through the front door without a car being announced behind him and without anyone carrying anything for him. And he walked to the front desk with the unhurried certainty of someone who is exactly where they intended to be. His name on the reservation was K. Reeves. and the reservation had been made 6 weeks earlier through a corporate account that the Alderton House held with a hospitality consulting group called Farrow and Associates, which performed operational audits of luxury properties at the request of ownership or the management company, and which had been contracted by the Alderton House's ownership group in Chicago to conduct a full-spectrum guest experience evaluation across 3 consecutive days, unannounced, beginning on the date in question. The front desk associate, whose name was Marcus Webb, 24 years old, 18 months into his first hospitality job after a communications degree from Belmont University, did not know any of this. Neither did the manager. His name was Preston Gould, and he had managed the Alderton House for 4 years, which meant he had been there since the beginning and had built the culture of the property in his own image, which was a thing he took seriously and spoke about in the specific vocabulary of luxury hospitality, elevated guest experience, curated service, intentional touchpoints. He used these phrases without irony because he had learned them in an environment that treated them as precision instruments, and he was not wrong that they described something real. He was wrong about what they were for. He was 46 years old. He had come up through hotel management the correct way, which is to say the slow way. Rooms division at a convention hotel in Louisville at 22. Front office manager at a Marriott in Indianapolis at 27. Director of operations at a boutique property in Memphis at 33. And then the Alderton, which was the job he had been building toward and which he had understood from the first week as the place where his career would be defined. He was not a cruel man. People who worked for him, on balance, respected him. He ran a tight operation. His TripAdvisor scores were strong. His occupancy numbers were strong. The ownership group in Chicago had expressed satisfaction with his performance in 3 consecutive annual reviews, the most recent of which had included a bonus. What he was, and what he had been long enough that it had become structural rather than visible to him, was a man who had learned the signals of the Alderton House's clientele so thoroughly that he had begun to use those signals as a sorting mechanism, a way of organizing not just the operational details of the property, but the people who moved through it. The guest who arrived by black car and wore the right clothes and interacted with the staff in the right register received the full expression of Preston Gould's hospitality. The guest who arrived the other way received a version of it, professional, correct, defensible. That was a few degrees cooler in a way that no one could have pointed to specifically, and that made an unmistakable difference. He had grown up in Madisonville, Kentucky, which was the seat of Hopkins County, and was, in the years when Preston Gould was growing up there, a place that had not yet decided what it was going to be after coal. His father had driven a delivery truck for a regional grocery distributor. His mother had worked checkout at the same Kroger for 19 years until the location closed, after which she had found work at a dollar store that paid her $3 an hour less and was 20 minutes farther from home. Preston had been a good student at Hopkins County High School in the years when being a good student meant something specific. It meant that teachers noticed you and encouraged you and told you that the world beyond Madisonville was accessible to someone who worked hard enough and was smart enough, which Preston was, and which was both true and, in the way it was told, incomplete. He had gotten a scholarship to a hospitality program at Western Kentucky University. He had worked every shift available to him for 4 years and graduated with honors and a specific understanding of what he wanted, not to be the person who drove the delivery truck or worked the checkout, which was not a judgment on his parents, but a decision about his own life that he had made at 16 and had not revisited. He wanted to be on the other side of the transaction. He wanted to be the person who managed the room that the world's significant people moved through. He had achieved this, what he had not examined, because the achieving of it had taken all of his attention, and then the maintaining of it had taken the rest, was the way that his desire to be on the other side of the transaction had quietly shaped how he saw the people still on the side he had come from. Not consciously, not cruelly. The way water shaped stone, gradually, in one direction, without announcing itself. The man in the plain dark jacket who set a duffel bag on his lobby floor at 3:15 on a Tuesday afternoon looked, to Preston Gould's practiced eye, like a guest who needed a different kind of management than the usual kind. Not a problem. A task. He gave the task to Marcus Webb and went back to his office. Marcus Webb checked in the guest with the professionalism he had been trained to deliver. Correct, thorough, covering the necessary information in the right order. What he could not fully manage, and what he was aware he was not fully managing, was the quality of warmth. The ease. The specific sense which the Alderton House's training materials described as the feeling of being expected that a guest should carry away from the front desk. He had not provided that. He had provided the form of it without the substance, which he knew even as it was happening, because he was 24 years old and had not yet learned to separate knowing a thing from being able to do it differently in real time. The guest had said nothing about it. He had taken his key cards. He had thanked Marcus by name, which Marcus noticed because not everyone looked at the nameplate, and fewer still used it. And he had picked up his duffel bag and walked toward the elevators with the unhurried certainty he had come in with. Marcus had watched him go. He had felt, in the specific way of a person who understands what the right thing looks like but has been pressured away from doing it, that something had gone wrong, and that the wrong thing had come from somewhere above him, and that he was not sure what to do about it. He went back to his work. The man in the dark jacket spent the next 4 hours in the Alderton House. He ate at Sable, where the service was good and the food was very good, and where the sommelier spoke to him about the wine list with genuine interest and without the 3-second assessment that had preceded everything at the front desk. He noted this. He sat at the bar off the lobby for 40 minutes and ordered a glass of Pappy Van Winkle, which the booklet listed at $85, and which the bartender poured and described with the same genuine enthusiasm he appeared to give to every order, and which was one of the better pours the man had encountered. He noted this also. He walked the second-floor corridor. He spoke briefly with 2 housekeeping staff members who were finishing the evening turn-down service in the rooms adjacent to his, both of whom were warm and specific in their interaction. They asked if there was anything he needed. They used his name when the door indicated it, and one of them, a woman named Cecilia, who had worked at the Alderton House since its opening, mentioned without being asked that the terrace bar had a particular view of the city at this hour that guests sometimes missed. He went to the terrace bar. She was right about the view. He ordered coffee and wrote in a small notebook for 35 minutes. The notebook was not the Farrow & Associates evaluation form, which was completed on a tablet later. The notebook was personal. He had been keeping it since the front desk, and what he was writing in it was not a checklist but something closer to a record of what he had seen and what he thought it meant. At 7:15, he called a number in Chicago and spoke for 11 minutes. At 7:30, he went back to the lobby. Preston Gould was behind the front desk when the man in the dark jacket came back downstairs. Not because he worked the desk, he had a full front office team for that, but because it was the end of the first shift changeover and he liked to be present for it, which was one of the genuine management practices that his staff respected. He showed up at the transitions. He saw the guest approach and adjusted automatically into the hospitality manager's version of professional engagement, the prepared attention, the slight forward lean, the expression that communicates readiness without eagerness. "I hope the room is to your liking," he said. "It's excellent," the man said. "The housekeeping team in particular. I'd like to talk to you about that." "Of course," Preston said. "Is there something Somewhere private, if you have a few minutes." Preston looked at him. The jacket, the jeans, the duffel bag, which he had apparently brought back downstairs for reasons Preston could not identify. He had a few minutes. He led the guest to the small conference space off the lobby that the hotel used for check-in overflow and private conversations. A room with a round table, 4 chairs, and a window that looked out onto 5th Avenue South. He sat. The guest sat. The guest set the duffel bag down and reached into the front pocket and produced a folded card, which he set on the table between them. Preston picked it up. He read it. He set it down. He was quiet for a moment. The card identified the man across from him as the lead evaluator for Farrow and Associates, contracted by the Alderton House's ownership group in Chicago. It was dated 6 weeks ago. It bore the signature of the CEO of the ownership group, whose name Preston knew the way you know the name of the person who can end your employment. 3 days, the man said. I arrived this afternoon. I'll be here through Thursday. Preston said, I see. I want to start with what's working, the man said. Because there's quite a bit that is. Sable is genuinely excellent. The bar team is excellent. Your housekeeping staff, particularly the woman named Cecilia on the 2nd floor, she told me about the terrace view without being asked, which is the kind of thing that doesn't come from a training manual. That comes from someone who actually cares about whether the guests are having a good time. She's been here 6 years, and it shows. Preston was listening. The front desk is where I want to spend some time, the man said. He did not say it with heat. He said it the way a person says the thing that needs saying, when they have decided that saying it clearly is more useful than managing how it lands. Not the mechanics. The mechanics are correct. The warmth is inconsistent, and from what I observed this afternoon, the inconsistency is not random. Preston said nothing. The assessment happens in the first 3 seconds, the man said. I've seen it in 6 properties over the past 18 months. It's a read, appearance, luggage, arrival method. And it's producing a tiered response that guests on the lower tier can feel even when they can't name it. I felt it this afternoon. I've been in enough lobbies to know the difference between a professional welcome and a professional welcome that's been cooled by 3 degrees. He paused. I don't think Marcus Webb is the source of it, he said. He's 24. He does what the culture shows him to do. The culture comes from somewhere above him. Preston Gould looked at the card on the table. He had known, in some part of himself, that he had not permitted to reach the surface, that this moment was possible. Not this moment specifically, but the version of this moment where someone outside the property looked at the thing he had built and named the part he had been most careful not to examine. He said, You're right. The man across from him waited. I know exactly what you observed, Preston said. I have seen it myself. I have not. He stopped. He started again. I have not addressed it, because addressing it required me to address where it comes from, and where it comes from is somewhere I have not been willing to look. The man said nothing. He waited the way he had waited at the front desk, with the patience of someone who understands that the next sentence belongs to the other person. I grew up in a town where the Alderton House was not a place you went, Preston said. You drove past places like this on the way to somewhere else, and you understood that the people inside them were a different kind of people from the people in your car. I spent 24 years getting to the inside of rooms like this. He paused. I don't think I ever decided to replicate the thing that kept me on the outside. I think I just learned it so thoroughly that it started running on its own. The man looked at him. That's the honest answer, he said. It's the only one I have. It's the one that matters, the man said. The other answers, the policy answers, the training answers, those can be corrected on a spreadsheet. This one can only be corrected by a person. He put both hands flat on the table. I'm not here to write a report that ends your career. I'm here to write a report that tells the ownership group what's working and what isn't, and to give you the chance to be in the second category by the time I check out on Thursday. Preston looked at the card. What does that look like? He said. It looks like a conversation tomorrow morning with your front desk team, the man said, where you tell them, not me, you, what the 3-second read is costing the property and what you want it to look like instead. And it looks like you starting that conversation by telling them where the read came from. Because the culture comes from you, and if it's going to change, it has to start with you naming it. Preston was quiet. In a room full of your staff, he said. Yes, another pause, the kind that holds something rather than avoids it. All right, Preston said. The man nodded. He picked up the card. He stood. The terrace bar, he said. Cecilia was right about the view. He picked up the duffel bag and walked back out to the lobby. The team meeting happened the following morning at 7:15, before first shift check-in began. Preston Gould stood in front of 11 members of his front desk and concierge team in the conference room off the lobby and said the thing he had been preparing to say since 9:30 the previous evening. He told them about Madisonville. Not everything. Not the grocery store. Not the delivery truck. Not the specific arithmetic of a household where $3 an hour meant something, but the shape of it. Where he had come from. What the Alderton house had looked like from the outside, and what he had learned about the inside that he had not intended to learn, and had not noticed learning. He told them about the 3-second read. He told them he had developed it, and modeled it, and never named it, and that naming it now, in this room, was the first step in not passing it on. Marcus Webb was in the second row. He was listening with the particular attention of a person hearing something confirmed that they had felt, but not been able to locate. He did not say anything. He did not need to. Preston said, "Every person who walks through that lobby deserves the same welcome. Not the same words, the same temperature. The person with the duffel bag gets the same warmth as the person with the matched luggage. Because neither one of them has done anything to earn less." He said, "I'm the one who needs to model that first, and I'm telling you now so you know it's coming." He opened the floor for questions. No one asked questions. What several people did, and Preston noticed it, and did not remark on it, and filed it as the kind of thing you hold, rather than analyze, was exhale. The specific exhale of people who have been holding something they did not know they were holding. The Farrow and Associates evaluation report was delivered to the ownership group in Chicago 41 days after the 3-day audit concluded. It ran 63 pages. The section on front of house culture was 7 pages, which was 3 pages longer than any comparable section in the firm's previous 4 hotel evaluations. The section began, "The Alderton House, Nashville, demonstrates exceptional service consistency at the point of stay, housekeeping, food and beverage, concierge, that is undermined at the point of arrival by a culturally embedded guest assessment practice that produces measurable inconsistency in welcome quality across apparent guest demographics. This assessment practice was identified and acknowledged by the property general manager, who initiated a corrective staff session during the evaluation period. The session was observed and is assessed as substantive rather than performational. Recommend follow-up evaluation in 90 days. The follow-up evaluation happened. A different evaluator. This time. She arrived in a car. She wore appropriate clothes. She received the full expression of the Alderton House's hospitality from the moment she walked through the door. She noted it in her report. The 90-day report was 4 pages. The front of house section was one paragraph. Improvement in arrival phase service quality, consistent with corrective measures noted in primary evaluation. Welcome temperature uniform across observed guest demographics. Culture shift appears genuine rather than coached. Recommend standard annual review cadence going forward. Marcus Webb was promoted to lead front desk associate 8 months after the morning team meeting. Not because of the meeting. Promotions at the Alderton house moved on the usual timeline. But because he had done what people do when they understand the thing behind the thing, he had changed how he worked, and the change had been visible. He had started doing something small. When a guest arrived who looked, in the old grammar of the lobby, like someone the 3-second read might have cooled, the person with the worn bag, the person in the practical jacket, the person who had taken a cab from the airport rather than a town car, Marcus Webb went 1 degree warmer. Not performatively, just the 1 degree that the read had previously taken away. He had a name for it, which he had not told anyone, but which he thought about, restoring the temperature. He had been doing it for 8 months by the time the promotion came through. Preston Gould, who had watched it happen without naming it, mentioned it in the promotion conversation. "You figured something out this year," he said. "I noticed." Marcus said, "I think you figured it out first." Preston looked at him. "I had help," he said. Cecilia, the housekeeper on the second floor who had mentioned the terrace view, was recognized at the Alderton House's annual staff appreciation event the following November. Preston presented her with the Employee of the Year award, which came with a cash bonus and a card signed by the full management team, and a brief speech that Preston had written himself rather than delegating. The speech said, in part, that the best service in a hotel was never the service that followed a script. It was the service that came from someone who had decided, on their own, to pay enough attention to know what a guest needed before the guest asked. It said that this quality could not be trained into a person. It could only be recognized and protected once it was found. Cecilia received the award with the composure of someone who had been doing the right thing for 6 years and was pleased, but not surprised, to be noticed. She thanked the team. She said the terrace view was not a secret. It was just the kind of thing you mentioned when you thought someone might benefit from it. The room agreed that this was the point. I have been in a lot of lobbies. Not as many as a hospitality consultant, but enough to have felt the thing Preston Gould described, the 3-second read, and what it costs the person on the receiving end of a cool version. What stays with me about this story is not the audit. It is the meeting, the 7:15 meeting in the conference room off the lobby, where a manager stood in front of his team and said the thing that explained the culture without excusing it, where he started with Madisonville and worked forward to the 3-second read and named the distance between them. That is a different kind of courage than the obvious kind. It does not look like courage. It looks like a meeting. But a person standing in front of the people they manage and saying, "I taught you something I should not have taught you, and here is where it came from in me." That is one of the harder things a person in a position of authority can do. Most people don't do it. He did it because someone sat across from him in a small conference room and gave him a clear picture of what the thing he had built was actually doing, and then gave him 2 days to change it before the report was written. He did not waste the 2 days. I don't know if I would have. I don't know if, handed a mirror that clearly, I would have had the capacity to look at it and then walk into a room of 11 people and describe what I saw. I hope I would. I'm not entirely sure. But I keep thinking about the temperature, the 1 degree. The specific, small, uncelebrated act of restoring to a person the welcome they were owed, not because someone was watching, not because a report was being written, but because a 24-year-old named Marcus Webb had understood the thing behind the thing and decided, quietly, to do it differently. That 1 degree is available to most of us in most of our days. The question is only whether we notice we've been withholding it. This story is fictional, inspired by Keanu Reeves' well-known reputation for arriving without announcement and leaving rooms better than he found them. If something in this one stayed with you, drop a comment and tell me what you took from it. Share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Subscribe if you want to be here for the next one. See you in the next one.